Hello, everyone. Hi, Danai. Hi, Nick. Hi, Finn. And welcome everyone who's tuning in on the Support Art Workers page on the Facebook Live. Welcome to Radical Voices, Radical Actions, episode 2. We have Finn and Nick here from Belfast in Northern Ireland. Danai will introduce them more formally shortly, but let me just remind everyone what this event is, and a little introduction on Support Art Workers for anyone listening on your side in Northern Ireland who may or may not know about us. So Support Art Workers is an initiative that emerged during the first lockdown in Greece in April 2020 as a reaction to the fact that art workers remained surprisingly invisible for the state as it was announcing its measures of support for the different sectors without taking art workers into consideration at all. Since April, the initiative has managed to bring together around 25,000 art workers from different disciplines across the artistic and cultural spectrum from all over Greece, operating on a bottom-up basis. The short-term goals of the initiative are to give visibility to the current needs of art workers in terms of state support in the context of the pandemic, and our long-term goals are to provide a framework for the emergence of proposals that lead up to a serious and complete plan for a cultural policy in Greece, which at the moment is totally absent. In these terms, the Assembly for the Organisation and Coordination of the initiative operates via different smaller subgroups, each one with its own aims and objectives, such as the organisation of communication strategies, the organisation of public actions of the initiative, the group that writes its texts, etc. And Support Art Workers Nexus is a newly formed subgroup, that's this group, that aims to expand the connectivity of the initiative with colleagues and organisations from Greece and abroad. Today's event is the second action of the Nexus group, a series of talks called Radical Voices, Radical Actions, with art workers from all over the world to discuss concrete ideas and actions that seek to make bold shifts in cultural policy and social organisation. And just to say, for anyone watching on the Facebook page, if you have any questions or comments, please do write them down. And we have Konstantina and Bettina with you over there who will forward them on to us so we can discuss them with our guests. So Danai, would you like to introduce our guests for today?
Sure. Hello from me too. Very glad to have you here. So today, for the second episode, the second exchange of the series Radical Actions, Radical Voices, Radical Actions, we are very happy to have with us Finn Kennedy, a writer and director from Belfast, initiator of NI Freelancer Surviving Corona, very illustrative title, a group to share information and support during a difficult time for freelancers in Northern Ireland, and Nick Harley, a freelance theatre maker and actor based in Belfast, initiator of Artists NI, a website set up by freelance artists in an attempt to connect to their artistic community, improve their visibility among the wider community, and empower them as individual freelancers within the arts. The two groups are closely interconnected, but you will tell us more about them shortly. Before we start, let me very quickly share some information about the structure of the event. We will start discussing the first initiative with Finn, and we will discuss a bit about it. Then we will discuss with Nick about her initiative, and then we will discuss, she will present it, we will discuss a bit about it, and then we will open to the questions of the audience and maybe open up also the discussion beyond the two initiatives. As Gary said, feel free during the whole duration to leave your questions, because we will find different moments to bring them in the discussion, and we can go. The whole event, or the duration, will be 45 minutes.
Great. So, Finn, I invite you to take the floor and give us a bit of an introduction on the initiative NI Freelancers Surviving Corona, to tell us a bit about what it is, how and when it emerged, and who's involved, how it works, what's it addressing? What areas does it seek to intervene? This sort of stuff. So if you'd like to tell us a bit about that, and if I have any questions for you or Danai, we'll ask them. But again, anyone in the audience, go ahead and ask. And just to say, they can be in Greek too, and we will translate them. Well, Danai will. So, Finn, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. So the Facebook page was set up at the beginning of the pandemic. We quickly realized that a lot of people were having work cancelled and having to look for immediate financial support. At that stage, we didn't know how long it would go on for and how long we'd be locked down for. I think we thought it would be 3 weeks and then everything would go back to normal. And so I was talking to some friends about what was happening, and we were sharing information. And I thought there could be some more people who are having the same conversations as us, and set up the page more or less for my kind of colleagues in theatre. And then very rapidly people started joining. So it now has almost 2,000 members, and it's a great space for support. So when the page was set up, a playwright from here called Abby Spallin set up the Bread and Butter Fund, which was a fund to give arts workers emergency financial support. And so we announced that with the page and updated it through the page. People have been able to share information on state benefits, their experience of applying for benefits, and things to know or to be aware of when applying. We share other types of financial support and funding available. People share information on support for mental health and well-being, as well as events and sharing work and ideas. But for me, the fact that we're connected is perhaps the most important aspect of it. So suddenly we had people from different art forms and practices who were now talking to each other and sharing information and supporting each other. So from this, myself and Nikki have been able to have honest conversations with various arts workers about the current situation. And what became clear was that a lot of our problems didn't necessarily begin with the pandemic, but existed before the pandemic, and it brought it all out. So now I think we're speaking collectively together. We're speaking openly about the problems that exist within our sector through the page. And for me personally, I believe it's the inequality and the structure in our sector in the north of Ireland. The majority of our arts funding goes into venues and organisations. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be invested in, they absolutely should. But the belief that investment in the buildings and organisations, the belief that that trickles down to independent arts workers is problematic. It's true to an extent, but it also creates a power structure where freelancers are relying on venues and organisations for work. And so therefore it's difficult to speak up about issues or problems that you might have because it could jeopardise your employment. So from the page, myself and Nikki began talking to other people, and we discovered that many issues that people had weren't really being talked about openly. And meanwhile, there were kind of senior members of our arts community here lobbying our government for art support. And when we asked to represent ourselves within that, we couldn't quite get in there. So they reassured us that they were speaking on our behalf, but without engaging with us properly, how would they know what we need? So in order for us to try and have our voices properly heard, we created a list of changes that we would like to see for our freelance arts workers, and we sent that directly to our Department for Culture and our Arts Council here, and we shared it publicly as well. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing to come out of the page, was that we were able to collectively get together and start thinking as one group, I suppose. I have the aims here, but I can go through the aims after Nikki shares hers. That's me.
Thank you, Phil. And very accurate with time. It's this British is famous for being accurate. Gary? I thought we lost you for a bit, but can you hear us? Okay, maybe Gary's not here anymore. It's very interesting for me to hear or to understand from your description that you actually operate more or less as a working group in the page, right, Finn? Like that there is a movement that's, and I was wondering, how does this work? I mean, apart from the solidarity, because you talked about the fund, you talked about different solidarity support things that you did for each other, but you also said that you share events, you share work. So is it a kind of working group that people, how does it work?
I suppose it is in a sense. So because there's so many members, a lot of people aren't as vocal on it.
Yeah.
So you kind of have individual conversations happening within the page. So if someone is talking about a collaboration or setting up a group to read plays or do performances, that conversation will happen. Then we kind of just highlight any kind of funding opportunities. There was also a group of people who started sharing ideas on how to kind of write a CV that wasn't your artistic CV, so that you could apply for jobs that weren't arts jobs, which I kind of disagreed with on the page. And I said, look, should we be sharing other jobs, or should we be campaigning for our right to kind of work as artists? But I was overruled because it's a democratic page, and people were like, no, if they needed money and income immediately, fair enough. So people were sharing kind of different jobs that were non-arts jobs. And yeah, just different funding. And I think even so artists like myself and Nikki, who have been working for a certain number of years, who would be used to applying for arts funding, there were so many arts workers, especially non-makers, so stage managers, etc., who don't apply for funding and are just employed and didn't know how to even go about filling in what seemed maybe for us a simple form. So people kind of offering advice on that and support on that and helping people write applications. So we are kind of talking as one group, but there are several different groups within the page as well, which is really good.
And obviously you said it began with your own personal network of people working in theatre, and it's expanded from there. But as it's called freelancers, NI freelancers surviving Corona. And has it gone outside of the arts? Is that correct? Not just in terms of what you're saying about people sharing work so that artists can temporarily, get paid from another source, but generally the members of the actual members of the group, has it gone outside of the arts world as well? What sort of?
It has, yeah, because obviously as admin, I can see everybody who's joining the group, and so I realized, so the title of the group is terrible, and I stole it from the one in the UK, which was like a big UK one. And so I just kind of copied it because it was so urgent. And so in my head, it was arts, but because we put freelancers, I remember seeing like massage therapists and some beauticians kind of joining the group. And I suppose what's good for that is it highlights the arts in different sectors, but also I think a lot of people were still applying for the same thing. So our self-employed grant and things like that, we could still share information, but the majority of it's artists. And I think anybody who isn't working in the arts has probably left the page now because it's,
And obviously you said that you brought together your list of changes that you sent to the department, but of course we can talk about that maybe after we've also heard about Artists NI, as you said. And what I was saying before my internet connection went unstable or whatever happened, was that for me, and maybe for the other people listening on the Greek side, on the support art workers side, it was striking how similar, well, both striking and probably not surprising at all when you think about it, how similar your story is with the history of support art workers. Indeed, we also developed a list of demands and continue to review that based on how everything is changing. Particularly at the moment where we're back in a second full lockdown, including curfews, things like this. So yeah, it seems to be changing on a daily basis. But yeah, maybe we can discuss them afterwards. So Danai, maybe we should hear from Nick now a little bit about Artists NI, and then we can bring the discussion back together about both of the initiatives.
Yes.
Thanks again, Finn.
Maybe before you go, Nick, let's remind again the people who are watching us that they should feel free to send us their questions, and we will soon discuss them. So, Nick, the floor is yours, and Artists NI.
I'll start off by saying apologies. A builder has just appeared next door to me, so if you may hear drilling, it's not me.
The truth is, in Athens, it's very common. It's very common.
Okay.
I think everyone in my flat block is doing a refurbishment at the moment.
Okay, so we're all comforted by the noise then. So basically, Artists NI is a website that I set up very quickly with my sister, actually. And it came as a response to a number of things that were happening. Obviously, I was very inspired by what Finn was doing with the Facebook page. And not long after the pandemic started, our local funding body, the Arts Council of Northern Ireland, had set up an emergency fund to try and get money out to as many artists as possible. And what happened as a result of that fund, it went out, it was advertised, and it closed. And word started getting out that the Arts Council were inundated and overwhelmed by the amount of response that they were getting back in terms of artists looking for financial support. And it became very clear to me, even within my small bubbles of people around me and fellow artists and freelancers, that a lot of people I knew didn't actually apply for the fund. For whatever reasons they had, they had enough money at that very specific time to pay for the rent, and they felt like they couldn't be taken out of a fund where their fellow artists or freelancers needed supported. And so I was baffled because on one hand, the Arts Council were overwhelmed, and the other hand, a lot of people weren't applying. And it became very clear that there's a saying here, you're only a number, or you're just a statistic, and we kept fighting and saying, like, we're worth more, we need more investment, but no independent study had been done to try and identify how many of us there actually was here. So we were having these arguments saying, we're many, we need more investment into the arts, but we didn't actually know. So I set out to start gathering an independent study on the statistics of artists here. So the website is very simple, and in my head, it's like a small, quiet movement for us to feel empowered, to realize that we're not on our own. Many people, we were getting, at the time as well, we were getting many, emails were coming out, write to your MPs, write to your MLAs, and it was very overwhelming, and people had never kind of been active and pushing forward before. So it was just a very simple concept. You went onto the website, you typed your name, your postcode, your email address, and whatever your role was a drop down, an exhaustive list, and it continues to grow, but of what you do, so that we started gathering statistics. So on the 25th of May, I did a Zoom call. There was 80 of us, just under 80 of us joined, and at 5 p.m. that day, we launched a website. And within 24 hours, we'd already gathered a statistic of 800. At this moment in time, we're sitting at around 4,500 people who have put their name forward. I found it really, for me, it was like just a moment of empowerment where people could claim, I work in the arts. Many problems came from it as well. For the first time, I realized that many of my colleagues weren't considering themselves to be artists. Even if I did, they didn't believe that they should be called an artist. They were a freelancer who works in the arts. So it's been very eye-opening for me as well, just in terms of the language that we're using when we're trying to connect people. Also that we here in our little pocket in our world, we have been very disjointed by geography. We've been disjointed by art forms, and also opinion of who is an artist, who's not an artist, who should be applying for money and who isn't. So in a very, I suppose, quiet way, this website just sits below everything else that's going on, and we're collating figures. I think many organizations try to get involved and support it, and I was very grateful for that. But at the same time, for the integrity of what we were doing, we remain independent. We haven't had any financial support from any organizations. It relies on freelancers sending messages to each other via social medias, email addresses, text messages, to collect this figure. So that's where we're at the moment. Like, we've had an overwhelming amount of people, I would say, in terms of people who filled it in, who have given permission to be contacted at a further date. So it's really the groundwork of potential movement at another time as well, because we're collating information.
Just to make sure that I get it right, so your website, Artists and I, is more or less a counting tool. So there's no other activity there apart from counting the figures, and then the activity, the exchange, etc., happens on the Facebook page that Finn talked about. Is it correct?
Yeah, it's just a simple act of standing up and saying I am a number, and that's where we're at. It's all, other things can be born from this, but at the moment, that's where we're at.
And you somehow try then to map the statistics, like where are you based, who is where and how many you are and things like that. You collect this kind of information. Okay. And can I ask, because this is actually, as you said, a job that the Arts Council should do. In Greece, they tried to do something similar with certain failures, but anyway, they tried. I wanted to ask if there was any response from the Arts Council, if this tool was somehow used, or if they reacted somehow, or if you contacted them to say, we have the tool,
I mean, yes, that I suppose our Arts Council do collect figures in some way. I suppose for me, it was about the independent study, and also, it's become very evident to me, I don't know about you, Finn, but like just levels of trust across the community needs work on, and not everybody trusts this or that and the other, whereas this was a freelancer movement, and it's born out of freelancers. I mean, this is an ongoing thing, so there will be conversations with the Arts Council, and I suppose it's important that we know how many we are equally as much, so that we can take steps or get actively involved, or just that simple act of saying I am here might inspire someone to then fill in the letter to their local MP, or so.
Exactly, yes. So not only to know how many we are, but who we are, and what do we do, what do we think. You also say that there are matters of actually personal lack of confidence in relation to what we do and how we, so it's good to talk about these things and actually realize them. It seems that we don't even know how different people think about what it is that what they do. There is a question from the audience that from Ioannis, which I think Tsoulakis. He asks, he thanks you for sharing your initiatives, and he asks, why do you think that this kind of mobilization and solidarity did not happen earlier through the austerity periods, etc.? Actually, because it's you too that did it. Why didn't you do it earlier? So why did you do it now? Why didn't occur before? And also, if you think that it is directly related to COVID, and that in the post-COVID era, if there is one, it will disappear, or it will, vanish somehow. What do you think?
I think this mobilization did happen before, but before we were working collectively, and a lot of our organizations were taking the lead on any kind of activism that was done But I think the difference in this was that everything kind of stopped overnight, and whilst the organizations and venues remained, those workers remained salaried, and then their focus came on, you know, well, we might have to change our program, and our focus was like, we have lost everything. And so in the past, I felt when venues were cut, when the arts were cuts, or when there were cuts of the arts, we all came out and mobilized together. And this time, when it impacted mainly the individual artists, I felt like there wasn't that same thing that we had done in the past. And I actually found that really gutting, that they're just, you know, it was very much the individual artists came out in support for the individual artists. A lot of organizations pledged their support, but that was as far as they went. With any, you know, we're here to help if you need us. And it was like, no, you should be leading the way you led before when we followed you.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like how you said that the pandemic largely highlighted issues that were already there, sort of thing. And so this new mobilization, although it was a direct response to the pandemic, it was largely addressing problems that were already pre-existing, other than the short-term things like as we just heard about, the lack of access to the emergency fund, these sorts of things. So there were those immediate things, but in general, actually you're addressing longer term pre-existing problems. Is that right?
That's true. Yes. But also, yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add that apart from what Gary said, and maybe it's a good moment to open it up also to beyond the pandemic, because in Greece it was a similar thing. It's true that the sudden on the one hand of the pandemic, which is a state of emergency, and the other things looked a bit more smooth. So on the one hand is the sudden, and on the other hand is the totally political. It's a totally political pandemic because it stresses the inequalities. So as you said, it hits suddenly, and it hits suddenly the weakest. Yeah. So, and that's why I think the reaction, but of course the problems go much beyond the pandemic, and it would be nice to hear you, what were your thoughts, what is the beyond the pandemic in Northern Ireland, and how it connects to now and to the future maybe. What are your demands in relation to that?
We're very, I mean, I can share what we had kind of, what we had created, and we put this out publicly. So it's myself and Nikki, and we got together with some other artists. And actually one of the big things was we thought we had it bad, and then we realized some other artists have it even worse as well. So we tried to incorporate all of that into our, oh, it's not letting me paste.
It's probably because there's the word count. So you might have to post it.
I'll just do it one by one. Okay, well, I'll start with the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if this works. Yeah, so this is our first one. So the first one really was the kind of key thing to redress the balance, because as we said, a lot of the funding goes into the venues and organizations, and so our opportunities come from small pots of development money or just direct employment, which means that we're creating work that is the vision of somebody else. And this was more, okay, just give us the money for our ideas, and we can do that alongside the venues and the organizations. We can perform in the venues, but this will be our work and it will belong to us, because some of the issues that came up was ownership of work as well. So Nikki, do you want to say anything on that, and I'll paste the rest?
No, I suppose because I suppose the list of demands have been like, they're very specifically, we were trying to focus on the idea of moving forward. We've identified things have not been working, and so it's like this list is solutions that we have come up with through conversations with fellow freelancers. So number one, implement a fund for freelance professionals to develop their own work. another hardship fund, so that freelancers could access that, particularly those who have fallen through the cracks of whatever current funding had been going on. We were looking for an establishment of 3 further funds, specifically for, I'm reading them off the side here, our freelancers with disability, our deaf freelancers. Through a lot of conversations that we were having with our fellow freelancers, we realized that our barriers were here and they weren't even getting as far as there in terms of accessing funds. A development fund for freelancers, ensuring they would have the ability to upskill. So upskilling was a huge part of that, and learn new ways of working, as we realized we're going to have to moving forward. Support for the creation of an independent freelancers network, and really that was a big one, so that we can engage with all the venues, etc. And a guarantee that all funding allocated for freelancers from whatever investment was either directly administered through companies, and venues should have an open and fair process, equality and opportunity, transparency. Transparency is one of the big things that we identified has been a major sticking point here, and I would say that crosses many places. Transparency within our own freelance community, within the gatekeepers of at whatever level, just in terms of just keeping the conversations open, even if that meant that there was nothing to say at that specific point. It's just important that we're all on the same page and looking at each other and speaking to each other as equals. Fun.
Yeah, I think the transparency thing was a massive thing, because again, even in terms of pay, there's such a weird thing about people not wanting to discuss what they're being paid for work. And we all started telling everybody all of it. And the thing was, when the venues and companies were furloughed, or they continued to receive funding and their wages, but they didn't get any programming money, they would say that some said to the artists, look, we don't have any money for this, so we can't pay you, but are you okay for this to go online? Or so there was never any discussion on their salaries being cut and them taking any money out of there, because that just would never happen. But it was perfectly acceptable to ask artists to work for free. So it's all of those kind of things around transparency, and even any kind of opportunities. When the opportunities became less, then certain people got them, and it was more, how can that be more transparent and fair? Really.
And also it's because I don't want it to sound either that it's all against the organizations or the venues or whatever. This is much bigger than that as well. Like, one, particularly here in Northern Ireland, are the money that's coming to us for the arts. We've got the lowest spend in the UK and Ireland in terms of the investment in the arts, which has a major impact on how the general public, kind of respect the profession or the sector. So it's also, even though it sounded like it's not against our venues, this is about creating a much bigger and bolder statement for the bigger question.
It is very, very interesting to hear how common our demands are. As we were preparing for the event, we also looked into our demands, and we tried to take out, let's say, the 5, 6, 7 main of them from them. And it is really surprising that that actually art workers across Europe have so similar demands. And it seems for me that there is a categorization around more flexible and more diverse funding schemes, So most of your demands relate to suggestions of different funding schemes that will include as many as possible, that will take into consideration all the phases of and all the modes of production and all the phases of artistic work, research, production, touring. In Greece, there are similar demands and a better distribution among organizations and individual workers. Of course, the problem is not organizations, the balance is the problem. So one group of demands goes to that, and the other group goes to social organization, actually, in solidarity. What we ask for is organizations or schemes from the top to the bottom for more diverse groups, committees, people that come together, you know, for different solidarity, for a more rich ecosystem, actually, because the time of concrete, continuous antagonism, I think it's over, and we all know it. So we are looking for different schemes, and it's very, for me, interesting to see that we all have the same problems. I don't know if it's actually optimistic or pessimistic, but you are not alone. Here, we too struggle for the same things, and above all, transparency.
And that word transparency is here on the list as we prepared, looking at ours. And it's right there. So many of the things that you say are basically just there. It's like, it's as if we paraphrased them from you or something. And I want to remind anyone watching, if they have any more questions or comments, because we only have a few more minutes. So if anyone has anything to ask, then please do.
I have something to ask, because we are in the frame of Radical Voices, Radical Actions. I would like to ask, what are, according to you, possible radical actions or radical results, let's say, of your actions so far? So if we would ask you, what have you achieved, and what do you consider, let's say, I don't like the word groundbreaking, or, you know, what do you consider exceptional in what you did as a result, and what came out until now? What would you say? What are the results that you value in the effort, in the common effort you do there?
I think the little moments have been quite big. I see friends of mine who have maybe never felt like getting involved before, and I see them growing, as myself as well, as in growing in confidence and starting to get involved. I think that's massive. I think that's really important, and I have so much love and respect. Like, I've never loved and respect a community more so than what I have done. I'm very proud to be part of an artistic community. So
It's amazing.
That's been a big moment.
I think mine's is the fact that we went straight to the chief exec of the Arts Council here, and we got a meeting with her, and she said she'd never met with a group of freelance artists ever. And even though
of a wider problem there, isn't it?
Yeah. And even though I am skeptical about the result of that, and we're waiting on an update, I think the fact that it's happened is enough. And they know that the pressure's on and we're not going to go away. And just the response we've had from a lot of support from our companies as well. And one of our venues is now hosting a kind of meetup and a discussion with freelancers about how they can better serve. And I've warned them, I said, like, you have to be ready to take this criticism and really listen, and they're doing it. So I think that's a really positive thing.
Indeed, yes. So the mentality, so you think the mentality of organizations change after your movement?
Some of them.
I mean, I think there's changes. Like, I'm seeing more open opportunities are coming out. Like, there's not, you can't, this is the thing, everything is so grey, so you can't identify as to what is, you know, there's so many movements happening here now, and across all different art forms, that, you know, music industry, everything seems to be kind of looking in on itself, and also kind of looking out and observing what's been going on. So you can't, but this collection of rumblings from freelancers that are saying, hold on a minute, we just realized we are the workforce, these rumblings now, you're seeing more engagement, people opening conversations, like open calls going out for people to apply. It's little stepping stones, but when they're all kind of pasted together.
The fact that I think that they reach your attention is enough. It means that there is some change, since you can notice it because you know very well the ecosystem there. And the fact that you notice it for me means that there is, and of course we hope that it will become bigger. And
do you think the Arts Council there has paid any attention so far to the fact that they've seen these initiatives coming to the forefront?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even like what Nicky's done with Artists NI, that very first emergency fund was actually going to cover 200 artists. And then there was a whole media thing with, yay, we're supporting artists, and like terrible photographs for press. And what Nicky did was go, then you're supporting 200 artists. Here is like here's 4,000 that we know of. Yeah. So I think they can't not listen. I suppose. We have a little bit of time. I mean, we can take a bit, 5 minutes more maybe. And I would like to give you some time to ask us questions if you have, but before we go there, I don't want to leave you without the exotic question, and I warned you for that, I will be honest. What is the situation with Brexit there? Here we're looking at Brexit as something that we don't understand what is going on. The news says it's a mess. So what is going on? Because I think officially the end of December, like in 8 days, UK will be outside Europe. What is the situation with that in general, but mainly for artists and actually again for the weaker, for the people who are not? Does this change a lot in your?
Yeah, for me that's a good question, because the answer is we don't know, and that's a problem. I think the artistic community, it's going to hugely affect us, and nobody is quite explaining exactly black and white how, or how it will or not. I know like traditional artists who are selling their wares will have to have special forms in order to even because Northern Ireland's very specific in that kind of whole question about Brexit. So we don't particularly know. I know some of the unions will be like inviting people to come in and maybe help explain a wee bit more how it's going to affect us directly. It's worrying.
I would ask, so do you worry that this is a new crisis that comes on top of the existing one? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I think we'll deal with all the legalities as they happen, but in terms of our identity here and what we've been through as a post-conflict society, I'm an Irish artist, I identify as an Irish artist, and to have to cross a border to go into my own country, and I just think it's going to raise a lot of tensions here that was unnecessary, and a lot of things that were promised in our peace agreement are being ripped apart, and I kind of worry for that. Yeah.
For social arrest, you mean for social arrest and tensions, social tensions? Because it's true, we kind of talk with you as if we talk to the UK, but it is indeed a yet new situation that is in between with the Brexit. So I understand things are quite complex, and let's say again, you're not alone. At least we are here whenever we continue to be here. I don't know if there's something we could do really, but psychologically maybe we can at least.
If you hear anything though, let us know what's going on.
Yes, we will.
I get updates on an email as a UK national living in Greece. But yeah, other than that, nothing ever is very clear, and I basically, I have no idea what's going on.
Comes back to transparency again, doesn't it? Even if it's like we don't know specifically the answers, that would give me greater comfort than the not really, it's just over there at the moment.
Yeah, good luck.
Crazy. Yeah,
So
the
now it's
the
moment to
transparency, sorry, Danae, the transparency that you mention in your demands in terms of the arts sector, really, we would all benefit from that in wider areas. Yeah, Danae, sorry, I interrupted you.
I was just about to say, any questions for us as we are about
And
to,
any last questions from the audience before we soon wrap up?
I would love to know what the results were of your demands.
Danae?
Oh, I thought you were getting ready. What were the results? In contrast to you, there was no emergency fund immediately after the announcement for art workers. So the biggest result was that because of the very quick coming together of the art sector under art workers, the pressure was high, and the government had to recognize at least some emergency funds for some artists, and they created this a similar system to Nix, where they tried to register the artists. So they took some action. There are many demands yet to come, and the communication is not always easy because the ministry doesn't want to recognize the demands. That's one problem. The other problem was that in Greece, the problems in the cultural sector were big. And it's not so the beyond the pandemic is really, really problematic one. So when the chaos comes on top of that, things are really impossible. And when you have a ministry that doesn't really want to collaborate, they want to take it slow, they want to, understand, they don't want to spend. It's this neoliberal, of course, government that really doesn't want, they want to spend in their own causes, but not to social aims. So the whole structure, cultural sector in Greece needs a huge restructuring. And actually, for us in our demands, similarly to yours, actually, it is a big thing to not limit ourselves only in the pandemic. Because the pandemic, yes, we need emergency funds now, but it's not only about that.
And we do continue to write new demands or update the existing demands, which is something that's being worked on at the moment by the group.
At the same time, we try to organize ourselves. So to continue to find ways to come together, similarly to what we do today with you and with people from Greece. And that's where we are.
I know it's that thing of like managing time as well. It's like, of trying your best to be involved, but just being aware of what you can commit to as well, because at the end of the day, we are freelancers in the arts, and it's finding that time to do it.
Things start actually from coming together, and that's something we have to realize. So first we have to really come together, find the ways to do that, and then address. Of course, these two things happen at the same time, but then you can address the higher, levels of power, and finding ways to get together is something that we are not used to in the capitalist system, which is super individualistic. So we train ourselves in that, I think, and at the same time another result here, it comes, you see, many people from the group became very active in the unions, because in Greece we have unions for dance, for theater, etc. And they were quite deactivated, so not very popular also with artists and things like that. And through this movement of support at workers, many people went in them, and they really refreshed them, and now things there are much more active, and that's amazing because they really push with the ministry. And from our side, we try to do it to give visibility to the demands of the base, let's say, of the bottom up hierarchies. So that's where we are now.
Brilliant.
Any other question?
You had a second.
Just like if you could pick anything, was there, and I hope there was, a positive to come out of the maddest year? anything positive.
We are
Well,
here now. For me, this is a positive thing in a very literal, but also very metaphorical sense. We came together. We know each other. I didn't know Gary, and of course, I didn't know you.
yeah, and what we were just saying about what Danai just explained, but also what you said about the results, the results so far of the initiatives, but also looking ahead. I think we have to see this as a positive thing, even though it feels like, probably to you as well, it feels like we're in the middle of a struggle, or maybe we are in the middle of a struggle. But the fact that these conversations are happening, and also you said, Nick, more organizations are popping up here and there. We've noticed here, and we're trying to communicate with others here, other groups, initiatives, collectives. The fact that these things are emerging, and as you said, the Arts Council there, and Danai mentioned the ministry here, can't ignore some of the things that are being said. I suppose we have to see that as a positive, that if and when we move into the post-COVID era, then hopefully we can build on this stuff, that it's not just we need an emergency fund right now that everyone can access. It's look at all of these things, the things you've identified that you listed for us, the things we've identified that are similar, because then we can all, we can work in a happier and with more job satisfaction, So it's one of those where it's sort of like, it's a negative, but also a positive sort of thing.
That's like that idea of like, sometimes it takes an absolute crisis in order for you to really put into perspective what makes you happy and what you need to do to change.
Yeah, I would not want to support, at least ideologically, this idea too much. That we have to have hardship in order to, because it can become tricky. But we have to admit that at least partly it's true, that it motivates us, And but so that's why the question that came from Ioannis for me is crucial. It's not so much. It's easy, let's say, or it's almost an instinct to react now. The question is not why you reacted now, because it's, they punch you and you react. It's more how you can, this can have a kind of sustainability, how this solidarity can continue, how this can become a value, that it's not only about when we are in crisis, it's about a different way to work. So it's a shift in mentality.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you said about that ideology, because I felt like during some of the campaign, and then when some organizations were responding, they would say, we're doing this show, we're supporting artists. And I think that narrative can be dangerous, of we're supporting artists by paying them for their work, instead of we're delighted to be working with these artists. And just to watch that dynamic, that we keep trying to show the balance of, you're providing work, they're getting content, and everyone's a winner, than you're doing something by employing them.
In the first episode of Radical Voices, we had a guest from Belgium who said that there in Brussels, there is a kind of a union, a kind of a group of the organizations. 280 organizations are somehow united under this union, and they commissioned artists to make a fair trade system for payment in the arts. Which is really like, okay, that is a radical thing. Let's say, how can we work on a fair basis with artists? And now they have this system online, and an organization, whenever they want to go to pay freelance artists, they go there and they check what is the fee that is fair. It's impressive. So it's not a dream.
Inspiring.
It is inspiring.
Yeah.
I put the name here for you. So
yeah, yes is yes. And we had a really nice message in the comments from Vasiliki Xenopoulou, if that's how you pronounce it correctly, saying, I want to send you all courage, strength, and wisdom to support. Thank you. So
thank you.
Well, Vasiliki.
It's a nice note to close.
A nice note to end on. Yeah. So thank you so much,
Thank you
Finn
very
Kennedy
much.
and Nick Harley from Northern Ireland, Belfast. It's been great talking to you, and please do keep in touch. Let us know how your initiatives are developing, and yeah, we
And
hope
if
to
you
speak.
need anything,
Yes.
Likewise, we're very loud here.
Yeah. Love and solidarity to all of us.
yes,
Yeah,
strength.
thanks so much. Thanks to everyone
Bye-bye.
who
Thank you
was,
very much.
thanks to everyone who was watching and leaving questions and comments.
Our next meeting is in January, so
Yeah,
see
listen
you
out
there
for that.
next.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
See ya.